He only rode into town for grain, but came home with the bride everyone rejected. The day Jonah Reed rode into Mercy Crossing for barley and flour, he had no thought of bringing another living soul back to his ranch. He wanted 2 sacks of feed, a tin of coffee, and enough nails to mend the north fence before the first cold rain came down from the Wyoming hills. By sundown, half the town would be watching him tie a stranger's trunk beside his wagon. And the woman who owned that trunk would be sitting on his buckboard with both hands folded in her lap, trying not to look afraid. It was late August of 1887, and the heat had settled over Mercy Crossing like a heavy blanket. Dust hung in the street. Horses stood with drooping heads at the hitching rails. The depot roof shimmered in the sun, and every board on the platform looked baked and pale. Jonah had already paid for his supplies when he heard a woman's voice behind him. "I am asking for honest work, sir, not charity." There was something in that voice that made him stop. Not because it was loud. It was not. It was steady in the way a hand is steady when it is trying very hard not to tremble. Jonah turned. A young woman sat on a small leather trunk near the depot wall. She wore a dusty gray traveling dress with a faded blue ribbon at the collar, too fine for prairie dust and too worn to belong to a woman with money. A brown hat rested in her lap. One glove had split at the seam, and she kept her fingers folded over it as if ashamed of the tear. Beside her stood Mr. Pritchard, the station agent, wiping sweat from his neck with a handkerchief. A few women from town stood near the depot steps, pretending to study the train schedule while listening to every word. "I told you already," Pritchard said. "Mr. Holly's passed 12 days ago. Fever took him before your train ever crossed Nebraska. That is a sorrowful thing, but it does not make you Mercy Crossing's responsibility." The woman lifted her chin. "Then point me toward someone who needs help in a kitchen, laundry, boarding house, schoolroom, anywhere decent." A laugh came from one of the women near the steps. "There are places that will take a girl with nowhere to go," someone said, "but decent is not the word I would use." The woman heard it. Jonah saw her face tighten, but she did not cry. She simply looked down at the unopened letters tied with string in her lap. Jonah knew that look. It was the look of someone standing at the edge of losing everything and refusing to give the world the pleasure of seeing them fall. He should have walked away. For 6 years, Jonah Reed had trained himself to do exactly that. Walk away from trouble that was not his. Walk away from tears, from gossip, from need, from any small kindness that might lead to caring. Caring had once cost him more than any man should have to bury. His wife, Mary, lay beneath a cottonwood tree behind his cabin. Their little girl lay beside her. A winter sickness had taken them both before the first thaw, and after that, Jonah had learned to live with one plate, one cup, one chair by the stove, and no voices in the house but the wind. He had come to town for grain. That was all. Then a man beside the freight door muttered, "Mail-order bride without a groom. That makes her nothing but leftover baggage." The woman's fingers tightened around the letters. Jonah set down the sack on his shoulder. The sound of it hitting the platform turned several heads. Jonah did not look at them. He walked toward the woman, his boots heavy on the boards. The station agent blinked. "Mr. Reed." Jonah stopped in front of the trunk. The woman looked up at him. Her eyes were hazel, tired, and watchful, not soft, not begging. Watchful, like she had already learned that help often came with a hook hidden inside it. "My name is Jonah Reed," he said. "I own a place 6 miles past Dry Creek." She said nothing. He cleared his throat. Words had not been easy for him in a long time. "My house has a loft. The roof does not leak if the wind is kind. I need help with cooking, washing, and keeping things in order. I can pay wages. Not much, but fair enough. You would have your own space." The depot grew quiet. The woman looked past him at the wagon, then at his hands, then at the pistol on his belt. Jonah saw her notice every detail. "What do you expect from me besides work?" she asked. The question struck him harder than he expected. "Nothing," he said. Her eyes narrowed. Men say that when they want a woman to stop asking. Jonah looked toward the people watching from the platform. Their faces showed curiosity, judgment, and the sharp pleasure of having something new to talk about. "If you want to leave tomorrow," he said, "I will bring you back myself. If you want the door barred from the inside, I will put a board across it before dark. If you want no questions asked, then I will ask none." The woman's mouth parted slightly, but no words came. Pritchard gave a nervous laugh. "Mr. Reed, you hardly know this woman." "No," Jonah said, "but I know all of you." A flush moved through the station agent's face. The woman stood slowly. She was younger than Jonah had first thought, perhaps 25, but there was a weary strength in the way she held herself. She gathered the letters against her chest. "Anna Whitmore," she said, "that is my name." Jonah gave a small nod. "Miss Whitmore." She turned toward the trunk. "I can carry it." Jonah did not argue. He only waited as she gripped the handle and pulled. The trunk scraped an inch across the boards, then stopped. Her face colored, but she did not let go. "May I?" he asked. For a moment, pride fought need in her eyes. At last she stepped back. Jonah lifted the trunk. It was heavier than it looked. Something inside shifted with a dull wooden knock. Anna moved closer at once, almost sharply. "That trunk stays locked," she said, "and what is inside belongs to me." Jonah met her eyes. "Then it belongs to you." The answer seemed to unsettle her more than any question would have. Her fingers brushed the key hanging on a string beneath her collar, then dropped away. He loaded the trunk beside the grain, tied it down, and offered her his hand to climb onto the wagon. Anna looked at his hand for a long second. Then she climbed up without taking it. A few people laughed under their breath. Jonah picked up the reins. As the wagon rolled past the general store, whispers followed them like flies. Anna sat straight, her letters held tight, her eyes fixed ahead. Jonah did not speak. He knew silence well, but after they passed the last building and the road opened into prairie, he heard her take one careful breath, as if the whole town had been sitting on her chest. 3 miles later she spoke. "Do you often bring strange women home from train depots, Mr. Reed?" "No." "Then why today?" Jonah looked toward the empty hills, where heat danced above the grass. "Because I know what it is to arrive somewhere and find the life you expected already gone." Anna turned toward him then, but he kept his eyes on the team. Neither of them said another word until the ranch came into view. The Reed place stood low against the brown hills, a cabin with weathered walls, a leaning barn, and a garden fence nearly swallowed by weeds. One cottonwood tree rose behind the house, its leaves moving though there was barely any wind. Anna stared at the place. "You live here alone?" Jonah stopped the wagon near the porch. "I did this morning." Something passed across her face, too quick for him to read. He carried her trunk inside and up to the loft. When he came back down, Anna stood at the foot of the ladder with the letters still in her hand. "I will earn my keep," she said. "You will not have reason to regret this." Jonah looked at the dust on her hem, the split glove, the tight bravery in her face. "I was not counting regrets." She climbed the ladder and closed the loft door. A few minutes later, Jonah heard the faint click of a key turning in a lock. Then came the rustle of paper. Then silence. Jonah stood beside the cold stove, listening to the empty house feel less empty than it had in years. Outside, the cottonwood leaves stirred again over the graves behind the cabin, and for the first time since he had buried his family, Jonah wondered if mercy could ride into a man's life looking like trouble. By sunrise, Anna Whitmore had already changed the sound of the house. Jonah noticed it before he opened his eyes. For 6 years, morning at the Reed cabin had always begun the same way. Wind at the chinks between the logs, a horse stamping in the barn, the slow complaint of the old roof as the day warmed it. Then his own boots on the floor, one man moving through a house built for more than one. But that morning, there was the scrape of a stove lid. Then the soft clink of a cup. Then a broom moving across boards that had not been properly swept in longer than Jonah wanted to admit. He lay still a moment, staring at the rafters above his bed. The loft door remained closed, but the ladder stood where it always had, and below it the room smelled faintly of coffee and soap. For one confused breath, his heart forgot the years. Then memory returned. Mary was gone. His little girl was gone. The woman moving through the cabin was a stranger he had brought home from a depot because the town had been cruel and his conscience had not stayed quiet. Jonah sat up and rubbed a hand over his face. When he stepped into the main room, he stopped. Sunlight came through the east window in a clean square. Anna had scrubbed the glass so hard it looked almost new. The table had been wiped down. The old ashes were gone from the hearth. A kettle steamed on the stove, and 3 small corn cakes sat on a plate beneath a cloth. Anna stood with her sleeves rolled to her elbows, her brown hair pinned badly at the back of her head. A streak of flour marked one cheek. Her hands were red from water and lye soap, but she held herself as if she had merely done the smallest thing in the world. "I found meal in the tin," she said. "It was not spoiled." Jonah looked around the room. "You did all this before sunup." "It needed doing." He nearly smiled, but the feeling came so unexpectedly that he did not trust it. Instead, he sat at the table. Anna poured coffee and placed the plate before him. She remained standing, watching his face with careful attention as he broke one corn cake open. It was dry at the edges, burned on one side, and softer in the middle than it should have been. Jonah took a bite. His throat tightened before he could swallow. It was not the taste. It was the fact that someone had made it for him. "Well?" Anna asked, trying to sound unconcerned. "It is good." Her shoulders lowered by the smallest inch. "I can do better tomorrow." "It is good today." She turned away quickly and began cleaning the pan, but Jonah saw her lift one hand to her face. Whether to wipe flour or hide relief, he could not tell. After breakfast, Jonah went to mend the north fence. He expected, in some quiet part of himself, to come back and find the loft empty. Maybe Anna would decide that a lonely ranch with a silent widower was no better than a town that had laughed at her. Maybe she would walk back to Mercy Crossing with her trunk if pride carried her far enough. But when he returned near noon, smoke curled from the chimney, shirts hung on the line, and Anna was in the garden with a hoe fighting weeds as if each one had insulted her personally. "That fence has not seen a garden in years," Jonah called. She did not stop. "Then it has had enough rest." A small, rusty laugh came from Jonah before he could stop it. Anna looked over her shoulder. The sound seemed to surprise her too. For the next 2 weeks, they learned each other in pieces. Anna rose early and worked hard. She cooked simple meals, mended what she could, and cleaned the corners of the cabin as if driving ghosts from them. She never asked about the woman's shawl folded in the cedar chest or the small child's cup Jonah had not had the courage to throw away. She saw them. He knew she did, but she left them where they were. For that mercy, Jonah respected her. In return, he did not ask about the locked trunk. At night, when Anna climbed to the loft, Jonah sometimes heard paper rustling. Once, he heard a sound like a breath breaking in half. He stayed still in his chair and looked into the stove until the sound faded. Everyone had a room inside them that no stranger had the right to enter. By September, the ranch began to look less abandoned. The garden fence stood straighter. Fresh cloth covered the table. Anna placed wild bluebells in an old jar and set them near the window. Jonah noticed them at supper. "Flowers do not fill a belly," he said. No, Anna answered, but a house should have something in it that is not only useful. He had no reply to that. The next morning, he brought in a cracked blue pitcher from the barn and left it near the door. He did not say it was for flowers. Anna did not say she understood. But by evening, the pitcher was full. That was how kindness grew between them, not in grand speeches, but in quiet offerings left where the other might find them. Still, peace on the frontier never stayed long without testing those who held it. The first trouble came on a sharp afternoon when the wind turned cold and the sky changed color over the hills. Jonah was tightening wire along the south pasture when a scream tore across the land. It was not human. It was worse. He dropped his pliers and ran. His mare, Mercy, lay in a shallow wash near the fence line, thrashing against the dirt. One front leg twisted wrong beneath her. Her dark eyes rolled white with pain. The reins had caught on a broken post, and each struggle pulled her harder against the ground. Jonah slid to his knees beside her. "Easy, girl, easy now." Mercy screamed again. Jonah's hands shook as he freed the reins. He saw the leg, saw the angle, saw what had to be done. For 6 years, that mare had carried him through storms, empty winters, and lonely rides back from town. She had stood outside the cabin after Mary died, waiting while Jonah leaned against her neck because no person was left for him to lean on. He went to the saddle and pulled the rifle free. The weight of it felt familiar and terrible. "Forgive me," he whispered. He raised the barrel. "Stop." Anna's voice cut across the field. Jonah turned as she came running through the grass, skirts gathered in one hand, hair coming loose around her face. She dropped beside Mercy without fear, placing one hand near the mare's neck and the other carefully above the injured leg. "Do not shoot her," Anna said. Jonah's jaw tightened. "She is suffering. She may not have to die." "You cannot know that." Anna looked up at him. There was dirt on her cheek and fire in her eyes. "Yes," she said, "I can." The certainty in her voice struck him silent. Mercy shuddered hard against the ground. Jonah gripped the rifle until his knuckles whitened. Anna looked toward the cabin, toward the loft window where her locked trunk waited. "There are things in my trunk," she said, "things I did not want anyone here to know about." "What things?" "Medicines, books, tools, what my grandmother taught me." Jonah stared at her. Anna rose to her knees. "If you trust me, I may be able to set the bone." Mercy cried out again, weaker this time. Jonah looked from the rifle to the woman kneeling in the dirt. Yesterday she had been a stranger. This morning she had placed blue flowers in his cracked pitcher. Now she was asking him to hand over the life of the last creature he loved. Anna's voice softened. "Jonah, bring me the trunk." It was the first time she had used his given name. And because of that, or because he had nothing left but hope, Jonah lowered the rifle. Then he ran. Jonah Reed ran harder than he had run in years. The cabin door struck the wall when he pushed through it. The room still smelled of coffee, ash, and the bluebells Anna had placed near the window that morning. For one sharp second, the peaceful little room seemed to belong to another life, a life where horses did not scream in the pasture and hope did not come with the risk of more pain. He climbed the ladder to the loft. The trunk sat beneath the small window, dark leather, brass corners, a narrow scratch across the lid. Jonah stopped before touching it. Anna had trusted him with her safety, but not with this. Whatever lay inside had traveled with her across half the country. Whatever secrets it held were the last walls she owned. Mercy screamed again from the pasture. Jonah grabbed the trunk by both handles and lifted. It was heavy enough to strain his shoulders. Something inside knocked softly against wood. He carried it down the ladder across the floor and out into the hard afternoon wind. By the time he reached the wash, Anna had taken off her shawl and folded it beneath Mercy's head. She spoke to the mare in a low, steady voice, one hand moving gently along the animal's neck. "There now, stay with me. Stay quiet if you can." Jonah set the trunk beside her. Anna reached beneath her collar and pulled out the key on its string. Her fingers paused at the lock. For the first time since he had met her, Jonah saw true fear in her face. Not fear of the horse. Fear of being known. "I do not ask what you do not wish to tell," he said quietly. Anna looked up at him. The wind loosened a strand of hair across her cheek. "That is the trouble," she said. "Some truths come out whether we wish them to or not." Then she turned the key. The trunk opened with a tired creak. Jonah had expected maybe fine dresses, jewelry, or letters from the dead man she had come west to marry. Instead, the inside was packed with cloth pouches, folded linen, small bottles wrapped in wool, a roll of needles, a leather book darkened from use, dried roots tied with string, and a narrow wooden box with a brass latch. Anna moved quickly now. Her fear disappeared beneath purpose. "My grandmother was a healer in Ohio," she said. "Women went to her when they had no money for a doctor. So did farmers with injured stock. A traveling horse doctor stayed with us one winter and taught her what he knew. She taught me." Jonah knelt opposite her, still breathing hard. "You set bones before. Chicken wings, lamb legs, a mule's ankle once. And once a boy's wrist after he fell through a barn loft." "A horse is not a boy's wrist." "No," Anna said, taking out cloth and a small brown bottle. "But pain is pain and bone is bone. If we do nothing, she dies. If we try, she may live." Mercy kicked suddenly, and Jonah threw his body across her neck to keep her down. Dust rose around them. Anna reached for the injured leg, careful but firm. "I need 2 straight branches," she said. "Smooth as you can find, 4 if you can, rope, clean cloth, and water." Jonah was on his feet before she finished. He tore branches from a willow near the wash and stripped them with his knife until his thumb bled. He filled a canteen from the trough. He ripped a clean feed sack into strips. When he returned, Anna was pouring a bitter-smelling liquid onto her hands. "What is that?" "Juniper wash. It may keep sickness out." She is shaking. So am I. Only then did Jonah notice her hands. They trembled so badly the bottle clicked against her ringless finger, but her eyes remained fixed on Mercy. Anna placed willow bark between the mare's teeth and rubbed a little of the brown medicine along her gums. "For pain," she said, "it will not be enough." Jonah swallowed. "Tell me what to do." Anna looked at him then, and something changed between them. Until that moment, she had been the stranded bride he had sheltered. He had been the silent rancher who lifted her trunk. But now they were no longer rescuer and rescued. They were 2 people kneeling in the dirt, trying to save the same fragile life. "You must hold her still," Anna said. "No matter what sound she makes. If she jerks when I pull, the bone may break worse." Jonah lowered himself across Mercy's neck and shoulders. He pressed his cheek against the mare's damp hide. "Easy, girl," he whispered. "Easy." Anna positioned her hands above and below the break. Her face had gone pale. "I will count," she said. Jonah closed his eyes. 1. Mercy's breath came harsh and fast. 2. Anna pulled before she said 3. The sound that came from Mercy tore through the pasture like grief itself. Jonah held tight as the mare fought beneath him, every muscle in his body burning. Dirt scraped his knees. Mercy's neck thrashed against his chest. Anna did not let go. Her jaw clenched, her whole body leaned back. Then beneath her hands came a low, sickening shift, followed by a small click. Mercy went still. For a moment, Jonah thought they had lost her. "Anna, wait." Anna bent close, one hand on the mare's chest. A breath moved through Mercy, then another. Anna let out the air she had been holding. "It is back in line." Jonah lifted his head. Sweat ran down his temple though the wind had gone cold. Will she live? Anna reached for the branches. We have not earned that answer yet. They worked until the sun dipped behind the low hills. Anna bound the leg between the smooth willow pieces, wrapping cloth around them, then rope, then more cloth. Every knot had to be firm but not cruel. Every movement pulled a sound from Mercy that made Jonah's stomach turn. When the splint was finished, Anna sat back on her heels. Her hands were streaked with dirt, sweat, and medicine. Her face looked worn clean of all pride. Jonah stared at the splinted leg. You knew exactly what to do. I knew what to try. Why hide it? Anna looked toward the ranch house, where the open trunk sat like a confession. Because people fear what they do not understand. A woman with herbs is useful when someone is desperate and dangerous when gossip needs a name. Jonah said nothing. Her eyes hardened slightly. In St. Louis, my aunt said no respectable husband wanted a woman who carried roots and bone needles in her trunk. Mr. Hollis wrote that he did not mind. He said a frontier town could use practical hands. And then he died before you came. Yes. The word was small, but Jonah heard the weight beneath it. She had not crossed the country only for marriage. She had crossed it hoping there might be one place where the pieces of herself would not have to be hidden. Mercy groaned. Anna wiped her forehead with her sleeve. We need to get her to the barn before dark. If the cold settles into her while she is weak, it will make things worse. Jonah looked at the distance to the barn. She cannot walk. No, but we can drag her. They built a sled from broken fence rails and old rope. It was ugly, rough, and barely wide enough, but Jonah lashed it together while Anna checked Mercy's pulse and whispered to her like a mother beside a sick child. The first pull nearly broke Jonah's heart. Mercy cried out as the sled shifted beneath her. Jonah stopped at once, but Anna shook her head. We must keep moving. So they moved. Foot by foot, they dragged Mercy across the pasture. Jonah pulled from the front while Anna walked beside the mare's head, keeping one hand near her face, one near the splint. The sky turned purple. The first stars appeared. A cold wind slipped through the grass and carried the distant call of coyotes from the hills. Jonah heard them. Anna did too. Neither spoke of it. By the time they reached the barn, Jonah's hands were torn raw from the rope. Anna's skirt was muddy to the knees. Together they eased Mercy into a stall bedded deep with straw. The mare lay trembling, eyes half closed. Anna checked the bindings by lantern light. Jonah stood just behind her, rifle in hand. He hated that he still held it, hated more that he might still need it before morning. Anna glanced at the gun. Do not decide before dawn. Jonah looked at Mercy. I have learned not to beg for miracles. Anna dipped a cloth into water and pressed it gently to the mare's mouth. Then do not beg, she said. Sit here and help me earn one. That sentence stayed with Jonah long after the lantern was hung, long after darkness settled over the ranch, long after the coyotes moved closer beyond the barn walls. If this moment touched your heart, stay with the story, because the hardest night at the Reed Ranch has only begun. Near midnight, Mercy's breathing changed. It became quick, shallow, and frighteningly weak. Anna pressed her hand against the mare's chest. Her face went still. Jonah saw the answer before she spoke. What is it? He asked. Anna opened the small wooden box from her trunk and removed the last tiny bottle inside. This was my grandmother's strongest heart medicine, she whispered. There are only a few drops left. Jonah stared at the bottle. Will it save her? Anna's eyes met his in the shaking lantern light. I do not know. Outside, the coyotes began to howl. The coyotes howled so close that the barn walls seemed thinner than paper. Jonah stood near the stall door with the rifle in his hands and his eyes fixed on the dark gaps between the boards. He could hear them moving beyond the corral, restless shadows padding through the grass. Every few moments, one of the horses in the far stall stamped hard and snorted. Mercy barely moved. Anna knelt beside the mare, holding the tiny bottle from her grandmother's wooden box. The lantern above her swung in the wind that slipped through the barn cracks, and every time the flame leaned, shadows crossed her face like water. Jonah looked at the bottle. "If there are only a few drops," he said, "should you save it for a person?" Anna did not answer right away. She touched Mercy's neck, then pressed 2 fingers beneath the mare's jaw. "My grandmother used to say mercy is not something you measure by who can speak and who cannot." Jonah swallowed. The name struck him quietly. Mercy. The mare Mary had named before sickness took the house from him. Mary had laughed when she said the animal needed a gentle name because she had such stubborn eyes. Now that same mare lay in straw, fighting for breath. Anna lifted the bottle. "I have carried this since I left Ohio," she said. "I told myself I was saving it for the day I had no other choice." Jonah's voice came low. "Is this that day?" Anna looked down at Mercy. "Yes." She tipped the bottle carefully, counting each drop into a spoon. Her hand trembled once, and Jonah saw how hard she fought to steady it. Then she eased Mercy's mouth open and poured the medicine in. Some spilled onto the mare's lip. Anna wiped it with her thumb and whispered, "Take it, girl. Please take it." The word please sounded more like a prayer than a command. Jonah turned away. He could face wind, hunger, broken fences, unpaid accounts, long winters, and the silence of an empty cabin. But he could not bear the sight of hope being used up 1 drop at a time. Outside, the coyotes howled again. He stepped to the barn door and fired 1 shot into the night. The sound cracked across the ranch and rolled into the hills. The horses jumped. Mercy flinched weakly in the straw. Anna looked back at him, startled. Jonah lowered the rifle. "Sorry." Anna took a breath and turned back to the mare. For a while neither spoke. The night deepened. Frost formed pale lines along the bottom of the barn door. Anna checked Mercy's pulse again and again. Jonah brought a blanket from the cabin and set it around Anna's shoulders, but she shrugged it off and laid it over Mercy instead. "You will freeze," he said. "She needs it more." Jonah went back to the cabin and returned with another blanket. This time he placed it around Anna himself. She looked up at him. The lantern light caught the exhaustion beneath her eyes. "Thank you," she said. He sat on an overturned bucket near the stall, the rifle across his knees. "You said your grandmother treated people who could not afford doctors." Anna nodded. "In a little settlement near Marietta, some paid with eggs, some paid with firewood, some never paid at all. You helped her since I was old enough to carry water." Jonah watched her hands as she folded a cloth and placed it beneath Mercy's head. "Then why come west to marry a man you had never met?" Anna's hands paused. He regretted the question as soon as it left him. "You do not have to answer." "No," she said softly, "it is fair." She sat back against the stall wall. For the first time since Mercy had fallen, Anna looked like the young woman from the depot again, tired and alone beneath the weight of people's judgment. "My grandmother died in spring," she said. "After that, my aunt took me in. She did not want me there, but she liked the little money my grandmother left. When that was gone, she began speaking of arrangements. Not marriage, not work, arrangements." Jonah's hand tightened on the rifle, but he said nothing. Anna looked toward the lantern. "I answered letters from Mr. Holly's because he wrote kindly. He said his wife had passed and he needed someone steady, someone not afraid of work. He said Mercy Crossing was small, but good hands mattered there." "Did you love him?" She looked at Jonah then, not offended, only honest. No, I hoped I could respect him. I hoped respect might grow into something safe. The word safe settled heavily between them. Jonah understood that kind of hope, not the bright kind people sang about, the tired kind that simply wanted shelter. And when you arrived, he was gone, Jonah said. And my aunt had taken the last of my money before I left. Anna's mouth tightened. I had no fare back even if there had been anything to return to. Jonah stared toward the open darkness above the stall door. He remembered Mercy Crossing's faces at the depot, how easily people had watched a woman stand with nowhere to go, how quickly they had turned her fear into entertainment. I should have said more to them, he muttered. Anna shook her head. You said enough. No. He looked at Mercy. I lifted your trunk, that was all. That was not all. Anna's voice was quiet but firm. You gave me a door that would close behind me without trapping me. Jonah could not answer. The barn grew silent, except for Mercy's breathing. Near 2 in the morning, the mare began to shake harder. Her chest rose and fell too quickly. Anna leaned forward, her face going pale. Jonah. He stood at once. What? Her heart is racing again. He stepped into the stall. Mercy's eyes rolled, wild and frightened. Her injured leg jerked against the splint. Hold her, Anna said. Jonah dropped beside the mare and wrapped both arms around her neck. Easy girl, stay with us. Anna checked the splint, then pressed her ear close to Mercy's chest. Jonah watched her face, searching for hope and finding only concentration. Then Anna reached into the trunk and pulled out a folded cloth pouch. What is that? Valerian and skullcap, it may calm her. May. That is the honest word. She mixed the herbs with warm water, blew across the cup to cool it, then dripped the mixture slowly into Mercy's mouth. The mare fought at first, then swallowed. Anna kept speaking to her in a low voice. Jonah did not know when his own tears started. He only felt them when the cold air touched his face. Anna noticed, but she did not look away in shame for him. She simply reached across Mercy's neck and placed her hand over his for one brief moment. That small touch nearly broke him, because nobody had touched Jonah Reed with comfort in 6 years. Not the men in town who nodded from a distance, not the preacher who once came by and found Jonah sitting beside 2 fresh graves with his coat soaked through from rain, not even himself. He had treated his own grief like a wild animal, something to be locked outside before it tore the house apart. But Anna's hand rested over his, warm and steady, and he felt the locked door inside him move. I could not save them, he whispered. Anna did not ask who. Maybe she already knew. My wife took sick after our little girl was born, Jonah said. His voice felt scraped raw. Fever came first, then pain. Doctor rode out twice, said there was nothing more. The baby stopped crying before Mary did. Anna's eyes filled, but she stayed quiet. Jonah looked down at Mercy's dark mane. I buried them beneath the cottonwood because Mary loved that tree. After that, this mare was the only thing still breathing around here that remembered them. Mercy's breathing shuddered beneath his arms. Jonah bent his head. If she dies, it will feel like burying them again. Anna's hand tightened over his. Then we will fight until morning. The words were not a promise that Mercy would live. Anna was too honest to give him that. But they were a promise that he would not sit alone with the pain. So they fought. Hour after hour, Anna cooled Mercy's face with damp cloths, checked the pulse beneath her jaw, loosened one binding, tightened another, and listened for any change in her heart. Jonah held the lantern when Anna needed light. He brought fresh water. He carried straw. He kept the rifle close whenever the coyotes returned. Just before dawn, the barn went strangely quiet. No coyotes. No wind. No stamping horses. Even Mercy seemed still. Anna's hand froze at the mare's chest. Jonah stopped breathing. "Anna." She did not answer. Her eyes closed for a moment as she listened. Then Mercy drew in a long, deep breath. Another followed. Slow. Steady. Anna opened her eyes. Tears slipped down her cheeks before she could hide them. Her heart has settled. Jonah stared at her. What does that mean? Anna touched the splinted leg and checked the swelling. It means she has made it through the worst of the night. The rifle slid from Jonah's hand and fell softly into the straw. He covered his face. For a long moment, no sound came from him. Then all the grief he had swallowed for 6 years rose with such force that he bent under it. He wept beside the mare, not proudly, not quietly, but like a man who had finally been given permission to feel what loss had done to him. Anna sat beside him. She did not tell him to stop. She did not tell him he was strong. She did not fill the air with words meant to make sorrow behave. She only stayed. When the first sunlight slipped through the barn boards, Mercy lifted her head a little and made a weak, rough sound. Jonah laughed through his tears. Anna wiped her face with the back of her hand. She knows morning came, she whispered. Jonah looked at her then, really looked. Her hair had fallen loose around her shoulders. Dirt marked her dress. Her eyes were tired, red, and full of a kindness that had cost her something. You saved her, he said. Anna shook her head. We saved her. No, his voice broke again. You saved more than her. Anna's lips parted, but before she could speak, hoofbeats sounded outside the barn. Both of them turned. A rider had come through the frost-white yard and stopped near the open door. He wore a mail pouch across his shoulder and held a thick envelope in one hand. Letter for Miss Anna Whitmore, he called. Anna stood slowly. The warmth left her face the moment she saw the handwriting. Jonah noticed. The mail rider handed her the envelope and rode away toward town. Anna remained in the barn doorway, staring at the letter as if it had traveled all the way from her old life to drag her back by force. Jonah stepped beside her. Bad news. Anna folded the envelope against her chest. I do not know. Will you open it? She looked toward Mercy, then toward the cabin, then down at the name written across the front. Not Anna Reed, not Anna of Dry Creek, not any name belonging to this new place where Dawn had just given them one fragile mercy. Miss Anna Whitmore. At last she slipped the letter into her apron pocket. Not today, she said. But Jonah saw her hand tremble. And he knew that whatever waited inside that envelope had the power to change the small, delicate peace that had just begun between them. For 3 weeks the letter stayed unopened. Anna placed it on the cabin table the morning after the mail rider came, setting it near the blue pitcher as if it were no more troubling than a folded receipt. But Jonah noticed the way she avoided that side of the room. She would cross to the stove, to the wash basin, to the cupboard, yet somehow her hand never passed near the envelope. It sat there through breakfast, supper, lamplight, and dawn. White paper, black ink, her old name written in a hand that did not belong to the frontier. Miss Anna Whitmore. Jonah never asked about it. He wanted to. More than once he caught himself looking from Anna to the table, wondering who had written, what they wanted, and why a woman brave enough to set a horse's broken leg could not bring herself to break a seal of paper. But he remembered the promise he had made at the depot. Your secrets are your own. So he kept his questions behind his teeth. During those 3 weeks, Mercy slowly came back to them. The first morning after the worst of it, she only lifted her head. Anna smiled as if the whole sun had risen inside the barn. The second morning, Mercy drank half a bucket of water. By the fourth, she tried to push herself up, and Anna scolded her so sharply that Jonah stood in the stall doorway and almost laughed. "You are worse than a stubborn child," Anna told the mare, "and I have no patience for foolish bravery." Jonah leaned against the post. "She has always had more will than sense." Anna glanced back. "Then she belongs here." The words were small, almost playful, but they warmed the cold corners of the barn. By the 10th day, Mercy could stand for a few breaths with Jonah holding her halter and Anna kneeling near the splint. By the 15th, she bore a little weight on the injured leg. By the 3rd week, she took 3 careful steps across the straw. Anna cried when it happened. She turned away fast, pretending to check the water bucket, but Jonah saw her shoulders shake. He did not speak of it. He only walked to the door and looked out at the pale October sky until she was ready to turn back. That was how they lived now, with kindness offered without forcing the other to name it. Jonah brought coffee to the barn each morning and pretended he was only checking the horses. Anna left his shirts folded near the stove and pretended it was nothing. He patched the loft window before the frost came. She mended the tear in his old winter coat and left the stitches so neat that he ran his thumb over them more than once. The ranch began to breathe again. The garden beds were cleared, though winter would soon cover them. The porch boards were swept. The cabin window shone clean enough to catch sunsets. The old child's cup remained on the shelf, but one day Anna washed it gently and placed it beside Mary's folded shawl in the cedar chest. She did not hide the past. She only treated it with care. That evening, Jonah stood before the open chest longer than he meant to. Anna was kneading dough near the table. The letter lay beside her elbow like a quiet storm. "You did not have to touch those things," he said. Anna's hand slowed. They were dusty. He looked at the little cup. They were hers. "I know." Jonah turned toward her. Anna kept her eyes on the dough. "I thought things that were loved should not be left to disappear under dust." The room became very still. Jonah wanted to say something, but grief had made him clumsy with tenderness. So he only nodded and went outside before she could see what those words had done to him. Behind the barn, beneath the cottonwood, he stood before the 2 graves. Mary Reed, beloved wife. Sarah Reed, our little light. The letters on the wooden markers had faded through wind and weather, but Jonah knew them by heart. He took off his hat and held it in both hands. "I do not know what I am doing," he said quietly. The cottonwood leaves whispered above him. "I brought her here because no one else would help. That is what I told myself, but the house sounds different now. I find myself listening for her steps. I carry extra wood before she asks. I stand in the barn longer than I need to." His throat tightened. "It feels wrong to speak it here." The wind moved across the grass. Jonah looked at Mary's marker. "I loved you. I still do. I do not know where a man is supposed to put love when the person it belonged to is gone." No answer came, only the cold rustle of leaves. At last Jonah set his hat back on his head. "I am afraid if I let myself live, it will feel like leaving you behind." He turned toward the cabin. Through the clean window, he could see Anna moving near the stove, her sleeves rolled, her hair pinned loosely, the lamplight soft around her. For the first time in 6 years, the sight of someone inside his house did not hurt. It called him home. A few days later, Jonah began carving in the barn. He chose pine from a tree that had fallen near Dry Creek. The wood was pale, straight, and sweet-smelling when his knife opened it. He worked at night after Anna climbed to the loft, shaving thin curls that fell into his lap. At first, he told himself he was making a stool. Then it became a chair back. Then armrests. Then rockers. When Anna found him working late one evening, he pulled an old saddle blanket over the pieces. "What are you hiding?" she asked from the barn door. "Bad carpentry." She smiled faintly. "I have seen that roof. You are not wrong." Jonah looked up startled, then he laughed. It came rough at first, as if his chest had forgotten how, but Anna's smile widened when she heard it. For one moment, they stood in the lantern light with Mercy breathing softly behind them, and something gentle passed between them that neither dared name. Then Anna's gaze lowered. "I should check the splint." Jonah moved aside. As she worked, he watched her hands. They were not delicate in the way town women praised. They were capable hands, small but strong, marked with soap burns, scratches, and healing salve. Hands that had unlocked a trunk full of secrets. Hands that had saved Mercy. Hands that had touched Jonah's when he broke open beside the stall. He looked down at his own hands. Scarred, weathered, hard. Hands that had held his wife while fever took her. Hands that had dug 2 graves. Hands that had nearly raised a rifle to end Mercy's suffering because he had stopped believing pain could turn toward healing. Anna glanced up and caught him staring. "What is it?" Jonah shook his head. "Nothing." She tied the cloth around Mercy's splint and stood. "You say that when it is not nothing." He did not know what to do with being known that closely. So he changed the subject. "Mercy is stronger." "She is," Anna's voice softened. "If she keeps improving, she may walk to town before winter." "Town?" Anna looked toward the open barn door, where the road to Mercy Crossing disappeared into darkness. "If I am still here by then." The word struck him like cold water. Jonah kept his face still. "Are you thinking of leaving?" Anna folded the cloth slowly. "I do not know." The letter on the table seemed to appear between them, though it was all the way inside the cabin. Jonah looked toward the dark yard. "I said I would take you back if you asked." "I know. And I meant it." "I know that too." Her voice carried something that sounded almost like sorrow. Jonah wanted to ask her to stay. The words rose in him so quickly they frightened him. Stay through winter. Stay through spring. Stay because the house is not dead when you are in it. Stay because I have started setting 2 cups beside the stove without thinking. But wanting had once led him to loss. So he only nodded. The next evening, Anna opened the letter. Jonah came inside after feeding the horses and found her seated at the table, the envelope broken open before her. The room smelled of stew, but the pot had gone untouched. Her face was pale in the lamplight. He hung his hat by the door. "On it." She picked up the paper, then set it down again. "It is from my cousin in St. Louis." Jonah stayed near the door. "She has found a position for me. Governess to 2 children, a proper room, regular wages. She says the family is respectable." The word respectable sounded bitter in her mouth. Jonah felt the old silence rise to protect him. "When would you leave?" Anna looked at the letter. "They want me before the first heavy snow." He nodded once. "That is soon." "Yes." The stew bubbled softly on the stove. Outside, Mercy shifted in the barn, her halter chain giving one faint ring. Anna folded the letter along its creases. "It is a good offer." "It sounds like one." "It would give me safety." Jonah's chest ached, but he forced the words out. "Then you should take it." Anna looked up. For the first time, hurt flashed across her face before she could hide it. "You believe that?" "I believe you deserve a life where people do not whisper about you from depot steps." "And you think St. Louis will not whisper?" "I think it is not this lonely ranch." She rose from the chair. "No, it is not." Jonah hated himself for the relief that came with her anger. At least anger meant she still cared what he thought. Anna walked to the stove, then stopped with the letter in her hand. "My whole life," she said, "people have told me where I would be safest. My aunt said I would be safe if I stayed quiet. Mr. Hollis wrote that I would be safe if I married him. Mercy Crossing said I would be safe only if I became someone they could approve of." She turned toward Jonah. And now you tell me I would be safe if I leave. Jonah could barely speak. I am trying not to hold you here because I am lonely. Anna's expression softened, but only a little. Did I ask you to hold me? No. Then do not push me away and call it kindness. The words landed hard. Jonah looked down. Anna crossed to the stove and opened the iron door. Firelight glowed across her face. For a moment, she held the letter over the flames. Then she hesitated. Jonah saw her hands shaking. It is your choice, he said quietly. Anna closed her eyes. Yes, she whispered, it is. She dropped the letter. The paper caught at one corner, curled black and burned. Jonah stared at the flames. Anna stood very still until the last piece turned to ash. When she turned back, tears shone in her eyes, but her voice was steady. I am not staying because I have nowhere else to go. I am staying because, for the first time in my life, I want to see what happens if I stop running toward someone else's idea of safety. Jonah felt something inside him break open. On it. She shook her head. Do not speak yet. If you are going to ask whether I am sure, I am not. If you are going to warn me that life here is hard, I know. If you are going to say the town will talk, let them choke on their own words. Despite everything, Jonah almost smiled. Anna wiped one tear with the back of her hand. I am afraid, she said, but I was afraid at the depot too. I was afraid the night Mercy nearly died. I have been afraid most of my life. Fear is not a good enough reason to leave a place where my hands are useful and my heart can breathe. Jonah crossed the room slowly. He stopped an arm's length from her. There is something you should know before you decide the Reed place is where you want to stay. Anna searched his face. He looked toward the cedar chest, toward the child's cup, toward the window where darkness pressed close. My wife did not die easy. Anna did not move. Jonah's hands curled at his sides. I have told you some of it, not all. Her voice became soft. Tell me what you can. The fire snapped behind them. Jonah drew a breath that seemed to come from a place buried deeper than memory. Near the end, Mary begged me to help her stop hurting. Anna's eyes filled with quiet understanding, but Jonah could not look at her. The doctor had gone, said there was nothing more to do. The baby was already gone. Mary knew she was following. She asked me not to let the pain be the last thing she knew. His voice broke. I held her, I prayed. I told her I loved her, and when her breathing turned weaker, I did not call the doctor back. I did not fight for another hour of suffering just so I could say I had done everything. I let her go while she still knew my voice. The room was silent except for the fire. I have carried that like a sin, Jonah whispered. Some nights I still hear her asking. Some mornings I wake up thinking I should have been stronger or crueler. I do not know which. Anna stepped closer. Jonah turned away. If you stay here, you stay with a man who has ghosts in every corner. Anna reached for his hands. He tried to pull back, but she held on. Look at me. He did. Tears ran down her face now, but there was no fear in it. You did not abandon her, Anna said. You stayed when staying broke you. Jonah shook his head. I could not save her. No, but you loved her through the part no one else was brave enough to witness. His face twisted with pain. Anna held his hands tighter. You think your hands failed because they could not keep death away. But Jonah, those hands carried my trunk when everyone else laughed. They held Mercy still while I set her leg. They bring firewood before I ask. They keep their promises. Jonah could not breathe around the ache in his chest. Anna's voice lowered. They are not cursed hands. For a long moment, Jonah stood there as if the words had reached a locked room inside him and knocked. Then slowly, he bowed his head until his forehead touched their joined hands. If you believe one honest act of kindness can change a wounded life, stay with this story, because Anna's choice has opened a door Jonah thought was closed forever. That night after Anna climbed to the loft, Jonah did not sit by the cold stove as he usually did. He went outside. The moon was thin over the cottonwood. Frost silvered the grass around the graves. Jonah stood before Mary and Sarah with his hat in his hands and Anna's words still burning inside him. "I do not know if a man gets permission to live again," he whispered, "but I know I am tired of calling loneliness loyalty." The cottonwood leaves moved softly above him. Behind him in the barn, Mercy gave a low, strong whinny. Jonah looked toward the cabin, where one small lamp still glowed in the loft window. Then he made a decision that frightened him more than any winter storm. Tomorrow he would finish the chair. And after that, he would ask Anna Whitmore if she could ever choose him not as shelter, not as duty, and not as safety, but as home. Morning came cold and clear over the Reed ranch. A thin frost lay across the porch boards. The water barrel had a skin of ice around the rim, and the grass near the barn shone white beneath the first light. Jonah stepped outside before Anna woke, carrying his coat in one hand and the weight of last night's decision in his chest. The world looked simple at that hour. Fence line, barn roof, cottonwood tree, smoke hole in the cabin roof. Mercy standing carefully in her stall, alive because Anna had refused to let despair make the final choice. But Jonah's heart was not simple. He crossed to the barn and found Mercy awake, her ears forward, her dark eyes bright. She shifted her weight on the injured leg, then set it down again with only the smallest tremble. Jonah opened the stall door and touched her neck. "You are doing better than I am," he murmured. Mercy blew warm breath against his sleeve. Behind the hay bins, the pieces of the rocking chair waited beneath the saddle blanket. Jonah pulled them out one by one. Two smooth arms, a curved back, strong legs, rockers he had sanded until no splinter could catch a dress hem or a tired hand. He had carved small bluebells along the top rail. Not roses, not grand flowers. Bluebells like the first flowers Anna had placed in the cracked pitcher when the cabin still smelled of dust and grief. He ran his thumb over the carvings. It had been years since he had made anything meant for beauty. Fence posts were useful, barn doors were useful, shelves, latches, roof patches, water troughs, gates, all of them had a clear purpose, but this chair had asked something different of his hands: patience, care, a softness he thought he had buried. He worked on it until the sun cleared the hills. When Anna entered the barn carrying a small pan of mash for Mercy, Jonah quickly set the chair back beneath the blanket. He moved too fast, and one rocker knocked against the wall. Anna stopped. "That bad carpentry is getting larger." Jonah rubbed the back of his neck. "It has a way of doing that." Her eyes moved to the covered shape, then back to him. She looked tired, but lighter than the night before, as if burning the letter had not solved every fear but had at least opened a window inside her. "I made coffee," she said, "and biscuits." Jonah looked at Mercy. "She can wait a few minutes." Anna smiled faintly. Mercy or the bad carpentry? Both. They ate breakfast in a quiet that felt different from their older silences. Before, quiet had been a wall. Now it was more like a table between them, something they could rest their hands upon without fear. Anna spread jam over a biscuit and looked toward the stove. "I spoke sharply last night." "You spoke truly." "I still should not have raised my voice." Jonah set his cup down. "I needed to hear it raised." She looked at him uncertain. "I have spent years mistaking distance for kindness," he said. "Maybe I needed someone brave enough to call it by its proper name." Anna lowered her eyes to the biscuit, but he saw color rise in her face. Outside, wind moved across the porch. The old boards creaked, and Jonah thought of the chair hidden in the barn. His courage moved toward his mouth, then retreated. Not yet. He had mended fence in lightning storms with less fear than he felt sitting across from Anna Whitmore with coffee between them. After breakfast, they worked side by side. Anna checked Mercy's splint and changed the cloth where swelling had stained it. Jonah repaired a gate latch near the corral. The cold made their breath show white in the air. Once, when Anna reached too high for a hanging lantern, Jonah stepped behind her and lifted it down. Their hands brushed. Both became still. It was nothing, a touch so small a stranger would not have noticed, but Jonah felt it travel through him like a match struck in a dark room. Anna took the lantern. "Thank you." Her voice had changed. Jonah stepped back. "Yes, ma'am." That made her laugh softly. "You call me ma'am when you are nervous. I call most women ma'am. There are no other women in this barn." He looked away, and Anna's smile lingered longer than he expected. By noon, Jonah could no longer bear the waiting. He went to the barn while Anna washed clothes behind the cabin. He brought the chair pieces to the open doorway and began fitting them together, peg into hole, brace beneath seat, rocker aligned to leg. He worked slowly, stopping whenever his hands shook. This was foolish, he told himself. A chair was not a proposal, it was only wood. But every piece of it had been made with the thought of her resting somewhere that belonged to her. Not a depot bench, not a borrowed loft, not the edge of a world that kept asking her to prove her worth. A place of her own beside his. When the chair finally stood complete, Jonah stepped back. It was not perfect. One arm curved more smoothly than the other. The flower carvings were uneven in places, but it was strong, honest, made to last. He carried it to the porch and set it beside his old chair. For 6 years, that porch had held one chair. One man. One grief. Now there were 2 chairs, side by side facing the hills. Jonah stood looking at them until he heard Anna's footsteps behind him. She stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. For a moment she said nothing. Her hands were damp from washing, and a strand of hair clung to her cheek. She looked at the new chair, then at the flowers carved along the back. "You made that?" Jonah nodded. "It is for you." Anna climbed one step slowly. "For me." The porch needed another chair. Her eyes lifted to his. There was a question in them, but she did not ask it yet. She walked to the chair and touched the carved bluebells with the tips of her fingers. "You remembered." They were hard to forget. She sat carefully as if the chair might vanish if she trusted it too fast. The rockers moved beneath her, smooth and quiet. A small breath escaped her. "I have never owned a chair." Jonah frowned. "That cannot be true." She looked out toward the hills. "My aunt's house had chairs. Mr. Hollies wrote that his house had chairs, but none were mine. I sat where I was allowed." Jonah's throat tightened. "This one is yours whether you stay a month or 50 years. Anna turned toward him. "And which would you prefer?" There it was. The door opened. Jonah could have stepped back. He had spent years stepping back. But Mary's grave stood beneath the cottonwood, and last night he had spoken the truth into the cold. Loneliness was not loyalty. Fear was not honor. Silence was not love. He took off his hat. 50 years would not sound too long to me." Anna's eyes filled slowly, but she did not look away. Jonah lowered himself into the old chair beside her. For a while, they sat with the space between them full of all the things neither had dared say. Then he reached into his coat pocket and took out a small cloth bundle. Anna saw it and grew still. "This belonged to Mary," he said. He unfolded the cloth. Inside lay a thin gold ring. Plain, worn smooth at the edge. Nothing a rich woman would admire, but it had once circled the hand of a woman who had filled the Reed cabin with songs, bread, laughter, and a baby's cradle. Anna drew in a quiet breath. Jonah held the ring in his palm. "I stood by the graves last night," he said. "I told Mary I did not know if I was allowed to live again." Anna's voice came barely above a whisper. "What answer did you hear?" "The wind, Mercy in the barn, you moving around in the loft." His mouth trembled with a sad smile. Maybe that was answer enough. Anna pressed one hand to her chest. "Jonah, I loved my wife," he said. "I will never pretend otherwise. A piece of me will always stand under that cottonwood, but another piece of me is here on this porch, looking at a woman who came into my life carrying a locked trunk and more courage than she knew." Tears slipped down Anna's cheeks. Jonah shifted forward, holding the ring between them. "I do not want you to stay because I found you at a depot. I do not want gratitude. I do not want duty. I do not want you choosing me because this place is safer than what came before." His voice roughened. "I want you to stay only if your heart can choose it freely." Anna looked at the ring, then at his scarred hands. "I am frightened," she whispered. "So am I. I do not know how to be a wife to a man who still loves someone he lost." Jonah nodded. "I do not know how to love again without being afraid every morning that God will take it back." The honesty between them trembled like the last leaf on a winter branch. Anna wiped her cheek. "I came west thinking marriage would give me a place to belong. Then Mr. Hollis died, and I thought I had crossed all that distance just to be unwanted in a new town." Jonah's jaw tightened at the word. "You were never unwanted here. I know that now." He reached for her hand, then paused. Anna noticed. This time she offered her hand first. Jonah took it gently. Her fingers were cold, but they did not pull away. "Anna Whitmore," he said, his voice low and unsteady, "will you marry me? Not today if you need time, not because the town expects it, not because winter is coming. Marry me when you are ready if you can see a life here with me." Anna looked across the yard toward the barn, where Mercy shifted inside her stall. Then she looked at the garden beds they had cleared together, the window she had scrubbed clean, the cottonwood that held his sorrow, and the porch where 2 chairs now stood. "I chose this place when I burned that letter," she said, "but I chose you before that." Jonah could hardly breathe. "When?" Anna smiled through tears. "The day you kept your promise not to open my trunk." He bowed his head, overcome. "And the day you lowered the rifle," she added. "And the night you wept without hiding. And this morning when you gave me a chair and did not call it love because you were afraid I would hear it too clearly." A broken laugh escaped him. "You see too much. I had to learn. Women without safe homes must notice everything." That truth dimmed his smile, but Anna squeezed his hand. "I am tired of only surviving, Jonah. I want to plant those seeds in my trunk. I want bluebells by the fence. I want to argue with Mercy when she tries to walk too soon. I want to wake in a house where I am not afraid of the footsteps below me." She looked down at the ring. "And yes, I want to marry you." Jonah slid the ring onto her finger. It fit loosely, but Anna closed her hand around it as if it were the first solid promise she had ever been given. He did not kiss her at once. He only held her hand and leaned his forehead against it. Anna placed her other hand in his hair, gently, as if comforting a man and accepting him at the same time. Then from the barn, Mercy gave a loud, impatient whinny. Anna laughed through her tears. "She disapproves of too much sentiment. She has always been bossy." They sat together until the cold drove them inside. That evening, Anna unlocked her trunk and left it open. Jonah noticed but said nothing. The books, bottles, cloth pouches, and seed packets lay visible inside. The hidden life she had guarded so fiercely was no longer hidden from him. She took out a small envelope tied with blue thread. "My grandmother gave me this before she died," Anna said. "She told me not to open it until I found a man with good hands." Jonah looked down at his scarred fingers. "I do not know that I qualify." Anna came to him and placed the envelope in his palm. "I do." Before he could open it, a hard knock struck the cabin door. Both turned. No one came to the Reed ranch after dark unless trouble rode with them. Jonah set the envelope on the table and reached for his coat. Another knock came, louder. Then a man's voice called through the door. "Jonah Reed, open up. This concerns the woman staying under your roof." Anna's face went pale. Jonah moved in front of her. "Who is it?" he called. "Deputy Harlan from Mercy Crossing." Jonah opened the door only halfway. The deputy stood on the porch with two men behind him. One held a lantern. The other held a folded paper with an official red seal. The deputy looked past Jonah toward Anna. "Miss Whitmore," he said, "a complaint has been made in town." Anna's hand tightened around the back of the chair. "What complaint?" The deputy's eyes showed discomfort, but he read from the paper anyway. "That you entered this county under false purpose, deceived a widowed rancher, and may be in possession of medical goods obtained unlawfully." Jonah stepped onto the porch, his face hardening. "Who said that?" The deputy hesitated. Behind him, one of the men with the lantern shifted. Anna already knew. Her voice came quiet and cold from inside the cabin. "Mrs. Bellamy." The deputy lowered the paper. "She says she has witnesses from the depot." Jonah felt the old anger rise in him, sharp as a blade. But Anna stepped beside him before he could speak. She wore Mary's ring on her finger, and though her face was pale, her chin lifted. "Then let Mercy Crossing hear my answer from my own mouth," she said. Jonah turned to her. "Anna, you do not owe them that." Her eyes stayed on the dark road beyond the deputy. "Yes," she said, "I do, not because they deserve it." She looked at Jonah, and something strong burned through the fear in her face. "Because I do." The ride into Mercy Crossing began before sunrise. Anna wore the same gray traveling dress she had worn the day Jonah found her at the depot. She had mended the torn seam at the cuff, brushed the dust from the skirt, and tied the faded blue ribbon at her collar with careful fingers. Jonah watched from the doorway as she pinned her hair beneath her hat, her face pale but steady in the looking glass. "You do not have to wear that dress," he said. Anna looked at her reflection. "Yes, I do." Jonah understood without asking. That dress had belonged to the woman Mercy Crossing had mocked, the stranded bride, the unwanted freight, the poor girl with no groom, no money, and nowhere to go. Today, Anna meant to walk back into town, wearing it as armor. Mary's ring rested on her finger, thin gold against work-worn skin. Jonah had offered to keep it safe until after the trouble passed, but Anna had closed her hand and shaken her head. "If they accuse me of deceiving you," she said, "then I will stand before them wearing the truth." Deputy Harlan had returned to town the night before with his sealed complaint and uncomfortable eyes. He had not taken Anna. There was no law that allowed him to drag a woman out of a ranch house for carrying herbs and medical books. But Mrs. Bellamy had stirred enough gossip to call for a public hearing before Reverend Pike and the town council. Jonah hated the sound of it. A hearing. As if kindness needed permission. As if Anna's life was a ledger Mercy Crossing had the right to open and judge. He hitched the team to the wagon in the blue-gray dawn. Mercy was not ready for such a trip, so she remained in the barn, standing with her healing leg braced and her ears forward as Anna went to say goodbye. Anna pressed her forehead against the mare's neck. "If they shame me, you behave yourself and get well anyway," she whispered. Mercy gave a soft breath into her hair. Jonah looked away, giving them privacy. When Anna climbed onto the wagon, this time she took his offered hand. It was the first time she had done so. Jonah helped her up gently, then held on 1 second longer than needed. "You say the word," he said, "and I turn this wagon around." Anna looked toward the road. "If I turn around today, I will spend the rest of my life hearing them behind me." So they rode on. Frost held to the grass in pale strips. The wheels cut through ruts hardened by cold. Neither of them spoke for the first mile. Jonah could feel Anna's fear in the way she sat straight beside him, her hands folded too tightly in her lap. At last she said, "What if they believe her?" "Then they are fools." "That does not answer the question." Jonah kept his eyes on the road. "Then we go home." Anna turned to him. "You make it sound simple." "It is not simple," his jaw tightened, "but it is true." She looked down at Mary's ring. "Home," she repeated softly, as if trying the word on. The town bell was ringing when they reached Mercy Crossing. People were already gathered outside the small meeting hall beside the church. Men in dark coats stood near the steps. Women clustered in groups, whispering behind gloved hands. Children had been pulled close to their mothers, not because there was danger, but because scandal always made adults pretend it was a lesson. Jonah stopped the wagon near the depot. Anna looked at the platform. For a moment he saw the memory pass through her. The hot day, the trunk, the laughter, the station agent turning away, her own pride standing in pieces at her feet. Jonah climbed down first and walked around to help her. Anna placed her hand in his and stepped down. The whispering began at once. She came back. "Look at the ring." "Bold thing, wearing another woman's gold." Jonah's face hardened. Anna squeezed his hand once, not to seek comfort, but to hold him still. They walked toward the meeting hall together. Mrs. Bellamy stood near the front steps in a dark plum dress, her chin lifted, her mouth shaped into the kind of concern cruel people wore when they wanted applause for it. Beside her stood Mr. Pritchard from the depot and two women Jonah remembered from that first day. Reverend Pike waited inside at the front of the hall with 3 councilmen seated beside him. Deputy Harlan stood near the door, looking like he wished the floor would swallow him. The room smelled of damp wool, lamp oil, and judgment. Anna and Jonah took their place before the council. Reverend Pike cleared his throat. "Miss Whitmore, this gathering has been called because concerns have been raised about your arrival in Mercy Crossing, your conduct while staying at Mr. Reed's ranch, and the contents of your trunk." Jonah's voice came low. "She is not on trial." The Reverend gave him a cautious look. "No one used that word, Mr. Reed. You dressed it in Sunday clothes, but it walks the same." A murmur moved through the room. Anna touched Jonah's sleeve. "I can speak." He stepped back, though every part of him wanted to stand between her and every watching face. Mrs. Bellamy rose. "I only wish to protect this town," she said. "We all remember the day Miss Whitmore arrived. She came here to marry Mr. Hollis, may he rest with the Lord. Yet within a short time she placed herself inside Mr. Reed's home. Now she wears a dead woman's wedding ring." Anna did not flinch, but Jonah did. Mrs. Bellamy continued, her voice growing stronger as she felt the room listening. "And now we learn she possesses bottles, powders, needles, and books of strange remedies. I ask plainly, who is this woman? A grieving bride, a healer, a fortune hunter, or something else entirely?" A few people whispered. Anna looked at the floor for one heartbeat. Then she lifted her head. "My name is Anna Whitmore," she said. "I came west because a man named Thomas Hollis wrote that he needed a wife and did not mind that I knew how to work. He knew I carried medical books. He knew my grandmother had taught me how to treat fever, cuts, childbirth pain, broken bones, and sick animals when no doctor could be found. The room grew quieter. Mrs. Bellamy's eyes narrowed. Anna went on. When I arrived, Mr. Hollies was dead. My money was gone. I had no family waiting. No room, no work, no protection except the little pride I could still hold in my hands. Her voice trembled, but it did not break. I asked for honest work. Some of you laughed. A woman near the back looked down. Anna turned slightly toward Mr. Pritchard. I asked the station agent where I might find respectable employment. He told me there was nothing anyone could do. Mr. Pritchard shifted, his face red. Mr. Reed offered shelter, Anna said. Not marriage, not favors, not secrets, work, wages, a loft with a door, a promise that if I wished to leave he would bring me back himself. She looked at Mrs. Bellamy. That is more respect than this town gave me. The words landed hard. Jonah saw Deputy Harlan's mouth tighten, as if he agreed, but dared not say it. Mrs. Bellamy stepped forward. And the trunk? Anna turned toward Jonah. He walked to the side door and brought in the trunk they had carried from the wagon. The room stirred when he set it before the council. Anna took the key from beneath her collar. Her fingers shook. Jonah noticed and stepped closer, not touching her, just near enough that she knew he was there. Anna unlocked the trunk and lifted the lid. Inside lay the cloth pouches, bottles, books, linen, needles, salves, seeds, and her grandmother's wooden box. Gasps rose from the women nearest the front. Mrs. Bellamy pointed. You see. Anna picked up one of the books. This belonged to my grandmother. She treated poor families who had no doctor. These bottles carry willow, juniper, hawthorn, comfrey, valerian, and other medicines people have used for years. One councilman leaned forward. You claim you used these on Mr. Reed's mare. I do not claim I did. And the animal lived. She is standing in his barn. Jonah spoke then. She did more than stand there with bottles. She set a broken leg with steady hands while I was ready to end the mare's suffering with a rifle. Mercy would be dead if not for her. A murmur moved through the hall, different this time. Curiosity, unease, maybe even respect. Mrs. Bellamy was not finished. A woman does not hide such things unless she knows they are shameful. Anna's face changed. The fear did not disappear, but something older rose beneath it. The strength of a grandmother's kitchen. The strength of nights spent carrying water. The strength of every woman who had ever helped in silence while others claimed the right to judge. I hid them because people like you teach women to be afraid of useful hands, Anna said. The room went still. Mrs. Bellamy's mouth opened. Anna took one step toward her. You called me unwanted freight before you knew my name. You watched me sit alone with no place to go and found entertainment in it. Now, you stand here pretending concern because Mr. Reed showed me kindness, and I did not remain broken enough to please you. A few people drew in sharp breaths. Reverend Pike looked down at his Bible, but did not interrupt. Anna raised her left hand, showing Mary's ring. This ring was offered to me by a man who told me the truth about his grief before he asked anything of my future. I wear it because I chose him, not because he owns land, not because I owe him, not because I tricked him. She looked toward Jonah then, and her voice softened. I chose him because his home was the first place in years where I could leave my trunk open. Jonah's throat tightened. Mrs. Bellamy's face colored deeply. That sounds touching, she said, but it does not prove your intentions. Before Anna could answer, a voice came from the back of the hall. I can speak to her intentions. Everyone turned. A small, gray-haired woman stood near the door, leaning on a cane. Jonah recognized her as Mrs. Vale, the postmistress, a widow who ran the mail desk with more fairness than most men ran banks. She walked forward slowly. 3 nights ago, Mrs. Vale said, My grandson burned his hand on a stove plate. The doctor was away at a calving north of town. I rode to the Reed place because I had heard Miss Whitmore help that mare. Anna's eyes widened. Jonah turned to her, surprised. Mrs. Vale looked at the counsel. Miss Whitmore cleaned the burn, dressed it, and gave me salve with instructions. She asked for no coin. She only told me to keep the wound clean and watch for fever. My grandson slept that night for the first time since the burn. The room shifted again. Mrs. Bellamy looked startled. "You went to her?" she asked. "I went because the child was hurting," Mrs. Vale said. "Pain does not wait for gossip to approve the remedy." A low sound passed through the room. Someone near the back said, "Amen." Then another voice rose. My husband's cough eased with her horehound syrup. Anna turned. A thin woman near the side wall lifted a hand nervously. "She left it on our porch after I asked quiet-like." Another man cleared his throat. "She looked at my mule's hoof last week, wouldn't take payment." One by one, small truths came out from corners of the room. Quiet visits, salves left at doors, advice given without pride, help offered to people who had been willing to use Anna's knowledge as long as no one saw them accept it. Mrs. Bellamy's accusation began to collapse under the weight of the town's own need. Reverend Pike stood. "It seems Mercy Crossing has already benefited from Miss Whitmore's trunk." Mrs. Bellamy stiffened. "That does not excuse improper living arrangements." Jonah stepped forward. "There will be no improper living arrangements." Anna looked at him. He met her eyes, asking without words. She gave the smallest nod. Jonah turned back to the room. "I asked Anna Whitmore to marry me. She has agreed. We came today prepared to answer lies. Afterward, we intended to speak with Reverend Pike privately." A wave of whispers moved through the hall. Mrs. Bellamy looked almost pleased, as if she had found a new wound to press. "How convenient." Anna faced her. "No," she said, "not convenient, chosen." Reverend Pike closed the complaint paper and set it aside. "I see no lawful cause to question Miss Whitmore further. Her belongings are not stolen. Her remedies have helped people, and her private promise to Mr. Reed is not a matter for town punishment." Deputy Harlan looked relieved. Mrs. Bellamy stood rigid, but she had lost the room. Then Jonah spoke again. "There is one more thing." Anna turned to him in surprise. Jonah looked at the gathered townspeople, then at the depot visible through the meeting hall window. "The day Anna arrived, many of you watched her suffer. Some laughed, some stayed silent. I was nearly one of them." His voice grew rough. "I have lived alone so long I mistook keeping to myself for being harmless. But silence can be cruel when it leaves a frightened person standing alone." No one moved. Jonah reached for Anna's hand. "She changed my fate, yes. But first, Mercy Crossing must admit she changed more than mine. She showed this town the difference between being respectable and being kind." Mrs. Vale began to clap. Slowly at first. Then the burned boy's mother joined. Then the mule owner. The sound spread through the room until it filled the meeting hall like rain on a roof. Anna stood frozen, tears in her eyes, her hand still in Jonah's. She had entered that room expecting judgment. She had found witnesses. But as the applause rose, Mrs. Bellamy leaned close enough that only Anna and Jonah could hear. "This town may clap today," she whispered, "but they will remember where you came from." Anna looked at her with quiet strength. "Good," she said, "then they will also remember where I stood." Mrs. Bellamy turned away. Reverend Pike stepped down from the front of the hall. "Mr. Reed," he said gently, "Miss Whitmore, if you still wish to speak privately, the church is open." Jonah looked at Anna. The public fight had drained the color from her face, but her eyes were clear. "Do you still want this today?" he asked. Anna looked toward the depot, then at the trunk still open before the town, then at the ring on her finger. "I have spent too much of my life waiting for permission," she said. "I do not want to wait anymore." So they walked from the meeting hall to the little white church next door, with half of Mercy Crossing still standing in silence behind them. But just as Reverend Pike opened the church Bible, the door creaked. Anna turned. Mrs. Vale stepped inside with her cane in one hand and a small folded paper in the other. "I believe," the old postmistress said, "that before these two are married, Miss Whitmore should read what her grandmother sent ahead of her." Anna went still. "My grandmother is dead." Mrs. Vale nodded softly. "Yes, child, but this letter came months before you did. Mr. Hollis asked me to hold it until your wedding day." Anna stared at the paper. Jonah felt her hand tighten. And suddenly, the church seemed to hold its breath. Anna could not move. The little white church stood quiet around her, its wooden pews worn smooth by years of Sunday hands. Morning light came through the narrow windows and fell across the plank floor in pale stripes. Somewhere outside, wagon wheels creaked, and a horse blew hard at the hitching rail. But inside, everything had gone still. Mrs. Vale held the folded paper in her thin hand. Anna stared at it as if the paper had risen from a grave. "My grandmother sent that," she whispered. Mrs. Vale nodded. "Before you arrived, Mr. Hollis received it with his own mail. He brought it to me himself because he said he had no right to read it. He told me, 'If the girl comes, and if there is a wedding day, give this to her before she speaks her vows.'" Anna's face went white. Jonah stood beside her, close enough to feel the tremble move through her hand. "Why did no one tell her?" he asked. Mrs. Vale lowered her eyes. "Mr. Hollis died before Miss Whitmore arrived. Afterward, the town was busy talking about her and not asking what had been left for her." The words settled heavily in the church. Anna took one small step forward. Mrs. Vale offered the letter. For a moment, Anna only looked at it. Then she reached out, her fingers shaking so hard the paper made a soft, rattling sound. The handwriting on the outside was familiar. Not neat, not elegant, but strong, slanted a little to the right, pressed deep into the paper as if every word had been written by a hand that meant what it said. "To my Anna, when she stands at the edge of a new life." Anna covered her mouth. Jonah did not touch her. He wanted to, but he had learned that some moments needed room around them. So he stood quietly while she opened the paper. Her eyes moved across the first lines. Then tears spilled down her face. Reverend Pike softened his voice. "You may read it privately, Miss Whitmore." Anna shook her head. "No." She drew in a breath that broke once before it steadied. She spent her life being called strange by people who came to her door after dark when they needed help. If this town has judged her trunk, then they can hear the woman who filled it. Mrs. Vale stepped back, her eyes wet. Anna looked down at the letter and began. "My dearest Anna, if this letter reaches your hands, then you have traveled farther than any woman in our family ever dared. I hope the man waiting for you is gentle. I hope his roof is honest, his table plain but open, and his hand steady when fear enters the room. Do not be ashamed if you married first for shelter. Many women have done worse for less." A small sound moved through the church, but Anna kept reading. "You told me once you wanted to be chosen for more than your usefulness. Child, usefulness is not a small thing. A hand that heals, cooks, mends, plants, and comforts is a blessed hand. But you are not only what you can do for others. You are a soul, and any man worthy of you must see both." Anna's voice shook. Jonah lowered his gaze to the floor, fighting the ache in his throat. She continued, "I packed the trunk myself because I knew your aunt would try to make you leave it behind. The books belong to you. The seeds belong to you. The medicines belong to you. The little box with the brass latch holds my marriage certificate and your grandfather's ring paper. Keep them until you find a man with good hands. Not soft hands, good hands. Hands that work, protect, help without asking praise, and do not close into fists when a woman speaks the truth." Anna stopped. Her tears fell onto the paper. Jonah's hands curled slowly at his sides. He thought of the trunk at the depot, the rifle lowered in the pasture, Mercy's neck beneath his arms, the rocking chair, the way Anna had placed her hand in his that morning. Anna read on. "If the man you marry does not honor what is in your trunk, do not give him what is in your heart. If he fears your knowledge, leave. If he mocks your courage, leave. If he uses your hunger to rule you, leave. But if he makes a place where your trunk can stand open and where your hands can do the work God placed in them, then build there. Plant the bluebells first. They look fragile, but they return after winter." Anna pressed the letter to her chest. For a long moment she could not speak. Reverend Pike bowed his head. Mrs. Vale wiped her eyes. Even Deputy Harlan, standing near the door, stared hard at the floor. Jonah turned toward Anna. Her face was wet with tears, but something in her looked less alone. As if the grandmother she had buried back east had somehow reached across all those miles and placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. Anna looked at Jonah. "She knew," she whispered. "She knew I would be afraid." Jonah's voice was rough. "She also knew you would be brave." Anna looked down at the ring on her finger, then back at the letter. "There is more." She unfolded the last page. "My dear girl, one last thing. Do not confuse rescue with love. A man may rescue you once and remind you forever. A good man will help you stand until you no longer need saving, then still choose to stand beside you. Choose that man only if you can look at him freely and say, 'I am not here because I was stranded. I am here because my heart has found rest.'" Anna lowered the letter. The church was so quiet Jonah could hear the faint shift of horses outside. Mrs. Bellamy had not entered the church, but several townspeople stood near the open door, listening from the steps. Anna did not turn toward them. She looked only at Jonah. "I can say that," she said. Jonah's eyes filled, despite his effort to stop it. "Anna, I was stranded when you found me. That is true, but I am not stranded now." She took a breath. "I am here because I choose you." Reverend Pike closed his Bible gently, then opened it again with new care. "Then I believe we are ready." Anna folded her grandmother's letter and handed it to Mrs. Vale for safekeeping during the vows. Then she turned to Jonah. He looked different to her in that moment, not because he had changed, but because she finally saw the full shape of what had grown between them. He was not the man who had saved her from the depot. Not only that, he was the man who let her speak, who made room for her secrets, who brought warmth without demanding gratitude, who had stood in a public hall and admitted silence could be cruel. He was wounded. So was she. But maybe, too, wounded people could build something gentle, if neither pretended the scars were not there. Reverend Pike began. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here before God and before these witnesses to join this man and this woman in marriage." Anna barely heard the rest. She heard Jonah breathing beside her. She felt his hand steady around hers. She smelled dust, pine, old hymn books, and the faint medicine scent that still clung to her sleeves from Mercy's stall. When the Reverend asked Jonah if he took Anna as his wife, Jonah answered before the last word had faded. "I do." Reverend Pike raised one eyebrow. "There is more to the question, Mr. Reed." A soft laugh moved through the church. Jonah looked at Anna, and the faintest smile touched his mouth. "I have waited 6 years to answer anything with my whole heart. I do not need it made longer." Anna laughed through her tears. The Reverend shook his head, but kindly. "Very well." Then he turned to Anna. "Anna Whitmore, do you take Jonah Reed as your lawful husband, to stand beside him through hardship and plenty, through sorrow and joy, so long as you both shall live." Anna thought of the depot platform, of the trunk, of the town's laughter, of Mercy's broken leg, of the chair with bluebells carved into the back, of her grandmother's words. She looked at Jonah. "I do." Her answer did not tremble. Reverend Pike smiled. "Then by the authority given to me, I pronounce you husband and wife." Jonah did not rush. He lifted Anna's hand first and pressed his lips to her knuckles, right over Mary's ring. It was such a careful gesture that Anna felt her heart ache with it. Then he touched her face with both hands, giving her time to pull away if she wished. She did not. Their first kiss as husband and wife was gentle, warm, and full of everything they had not said in words. Outside the church, Mercy Crossing waited. Anna expected whispers. She expected stiff faces and eyes turned away. There were some. Mrs. Bellamy stood across the street, her arms folded, her mouth tight with defeat. But Mrs. Vale stood at the bottom step with a smile. "Welcome, Mrs. Reed." The name struck Anna softly. Mrs. Reed. Not Miss Whitmore, stranded bride. Not unwanted freight. Not the poor girl with a locked trunk. Mrs. Reed. Jonah helped her down the church steps. The burned boy and his mother stood near the fence. The boy lifted his bandaged hand. "Thank you, ma'am," he said shyly. Anna knelt before him. "Is it hurting less?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good, keep it clean and do not scratch." The child nodded solemnly. His mother touched Anna's shoulder. "I am sorry," she said quietly, "for not speaking sooner." Anna looked at her. The apology did not erase the depot, but it placed one small stone on the side of healing. "Speak sooner next time," Anna said gently. The woman nodded, ashamed. Jonah and Anna walked toward the wagon. As they passed the depot, Anna stopped. The platform stood empty now. The same boards, the same wall, the same place where she had sat with nowhere to go while strangers measured her worth by her misfortune. Jonah watched her carefully. "Do you want to leave?" "Not yet." Anna walked to the bench near the wall and placed her hand on the wood. "I thought this place was the end of my life," she said. Jonah stood beside her. "Maybe it was only the end of the part where you had to beg for room in it." She looked at him, surprised by the softness of the words. Then she smiled. "Tell me in the comments, would you have had the courage to face that town after what Anna endured, or would you have ridden away and never looked back?" They rode out of Mercy Crossing before noon, not hurried, not hiding. People watched them from windows and porches. Some nodded, some turned away. Mrs. Bellamy did neither. She simply stood with her face stiff as the wagon rolled past. Anna did not lower her eyes. Halfway home, Jonah reached across the seat and took her hand. She let him. No promise spoken in the church felt as real as that quiet touch on the road back to the ranch. When the Reed place came into view, Anna saw smoke from the chimney, the barn door standing open, the cottonwood behind the cabin, and the two rocking chairs on the porch. "Home." The word came to her easily this time. Jonah stopped the wagon near the barn. Before he could climb down, Anna touched his sleeve. "There is something I should do." He looked at her. "What?" She glanced toward the loft window. "My trunk has been open to you, but not all the way." They carried the trunk down from the loft together and placed it in the main room near the table. Anna opened it, removed the books, the bottles, the seed packets, the cloth pouches, and the wooden box. At the bottom lay one more thing wrapped in a faded towel. Jonah had never seen it before. Anna lifted it carefully and unfolded the cloth. Inside was a small silver baby spoon. Jonah's face changed. Anna held it in both hands. "My grandmother saved this from my mother," she said softly. It was mine when I was small. I kept it because I thought one day maybe I would have a child of my own." Jonah did not speak. Anna looked toward the cedar chest, where Sarah's little cup rested beside Mary's shawl. "I know that may hurt you to see." His eyes glistened. "It does." She lowered the spoon. "I can put it away." Jonah reached out and covered her hand with his. "No." His voice was strained but steady. "Do not hide life from this house, because grief once lived here." Anna's lips parted. Jonah took the small spoon from her and crossed to the cedar chest. He opened it and looked for a long moment at the shawl and the child's cup. Then he placed the spoon beside them. Not replacing. Not erasing. Joining. Anna stood behind him with tears in her eyes. Jonah closed the chest slowly. That evening, they sat in the two rocking chairs while the sun lowered behind the hills. Mercy stepped from the barn with careful, uneven movements, led by Jonah's old gelding moving beside her as if guarding each step. Anna watched the mare. "She is stronger." Jonah reached across the space between the chairs and took Anna's hand. "So are we." For the first time in years, the Reed porch held no silence that needed to be feared. But as twilight settled over the ranch, Jonah noticed a rider far off on the road from Mercy Crossing. The figure moved slowly, almost hesitantly, stopping once near the bend before continuing toward the cabin. Anna saw him too. "Who is that?" Jonah stood, his hand shading his eyes. "I do not know." The rider came closer. When he reached the yard, Jonah recognized Deputy Harlan, but this time there was no sealed complaint in his hand, no stern duty in his face. Only worry. He removed his hat. "Mrs. Reed," he said, looking at Anna, "I am sorry to come so soon after your wedding." Jonah stepped down from the porch. "What happened?" The deputy looked toward Mercy Crossing, then back at Anna. "It is Mrs. Bellamy's little niece. Fever took her hard this afternoon. Doctor is still 2 days north. They are asking for you." Anna went very still. Only hours ago, Mrs. Bellamy had tried to shame her before the whole town. Now that same woman needed the trunk she had condemned. Jonah looked at his wife. "You do not have to go." Anna's eyes moved to the open cabin door, to the trunk inside, to the bluebells carved in her chair, then toward the road. Her voice was quiet. "Yes," she said, "I do." Anna Reed stood on the porch with her wedding dress still dusty at the hem, and Mary's ring warm on her finger. For one long moment, no one moved. The evening had turned blue around the ranch. A thin wind slid over the grass and pushed softly against the open cabin door. Inside, Anna's trunk sat near the table, still open from when she had placed her old silver baby spoon beside Sarah's cup. The bottles, cloth pouches, and medical books lay in plain sight, no longer hidden from the house or from the man who had made it home. Now those same things were being called for by the woman who had tried to shame her. Deputy Harlan stood beside his horse, hat in both hands. "It came on fast," he said. "High fever, shaking. Little girl cannot keep water down. Mrs. Bellamy sent me because she thought you might refuse if she came herself." Jonah's face darkened. "She thought right to be ashamed." The deputy looked down. "I will not argue that." Anna glanced toward Mercy Crossing's road. Dust still hung faintly behind the deputy's horse. Somewhere beyond those darkening hills, a child lay burning with fever while grown people counted old insults. Jonah stepped close to Anna. "You owe Mrs. Bellamy nothing." "No," Anna said. Her voice was calm, but her hands had gone cold. "I owe the child." Jonah's anger softened into worry. "You have had no rest. We have been in town since morning. You stood before that council. You married me. You have barely eaten." Anna looked at him then, and despite the fear in her face, something gentle passed through her eyes. "I married a man with good hands," she said. "Now let mine do what they were taught to do." Jonah closed his mouth. There was no answer to that except trust. He turned at once and stepped into the cabin. Anna followed, already reaching for cloth. Together, without needing many words, they packed the trunk for travel. Willow bark for pain, yarrow for sweating, mint for the stomach, clean linen, a small jar of honey, a bottle of fever wash, her grandmother's old book, though Anna knew most of it by heart. Jonah lifted the trunk to the wagon. Anna changed from her gray dress into a dark work dress and tied an apron over it. Before stepping outside, she paused at the cedar chest. Her hand rested on the lid where the child's cup and silver spoon now lay within. Jonah watched from the doorway. "What is it?" Anna's voice was low. "I was thinking how quickly a house can become frightened when a child is sick." Jonah's face tightened with old pain. "Yes." She turned to him. "If this becomes too hard for you, you do not have to come inside." For a moment, grief moved visibly through him. Then he crossed the room and took her coat from the peg. "I will come where you go." He helped her into the coat as carefully as if she were made of glass, then took the rifle from above the door, not because he expected danger from men, but because the road would be dark before they returned. They rode toward Mercy, crossing under a sky deepening from blue to black. The wagon wheels rattled over frozen ruts. Anna sat with the trunk at her feet and her hands clasped in her lap. Jonah drove without pushing the team too hard, but the horses seemed to understand urgency and leaned into their traces. Halfway there, Anna spoke. "What if I cannot help her?" Jonah looked at the road. "Then you will still have answered when called." "That is not enough for a mother." "No," he said quietly, "it is not." She looked at him then. The wind touched the brim of his hat and cast his face in shadow. She knew he was thinking of Mary, of little Sarah, of fever and helpless rooms and prayers that did not turn the night back. "I am sorry," Anna said. "For what?" "For bringing you near this kind of pain again." Jonah kept his hands steady on the reins. "You did not bring pain into the world, Anna. You only refused to leave it unattended." Those words settled over her like a blanket. By the time they reached Mercy Crossing, lanterns burned in several windows. The town that had been noisy with judgment that morning now seemed hushed beneath fear. A few people stood outside the Bellamy house, whispering not with cruelty this time, but with worry. Mrs. Bellamy's home was the largest on the east side of town, painted white with green shutters. Anna had passed it earlier that day without looking. Now she climbed down in front of it with her trunk in Jonah's hands. The front door opened before they reached the steps. Mrs. Bellamy stood inside. All the sharp pride had gone out of her face. Her hair was partly loosened, and her eyes were swollen. She looked older than she had that morning, smaller somehow, as if fear had pulled the starch from her bones. When she saw Anna, her mouth trembled. "Mrs. Reed." Anna had never heard her say the name before. "Where is the child?" Mrs. Bellamy seemed startled that Anna did not demand an apology first. "In the back bedroom." Anna stepped inside. The house smelled of vinegar, lamp smoke, and sickness. A woman near the stove held a basin of water. Another sat at the kitchen table crying into her handkerchief. No one made a sound when Anna entered with Jonah behind her. The little girl lay in a narrow bed beneath too many quilts. She was perhaps 7 years old, with damp hair stuck to her forehead and cheeks flushed bright with fever. Her small hands twisted weakly at the blanket. Every few breaths, she whimpered without waking. Anna set her trunk beside the bed and touched the child's forehead. "Too hot." She checked the pulse at the wrist. "Too fast." Then she lifted one eyelid, looked at the tongue, smelled the breath, and listened to the chest. Jonah stood near the wall, silent. His face had gone pale, but he did not leave. "What is her name?" Anna asked. Mrs. Bellamy swallowed. "Nora." Anna looked at the child again. "Nora, can you hear me?" The little girl stirred, but did not answer. "How long has the fever been high?" "Since afternoon," Mrs. Bellamy said. "But she was tired this morning, said her head hurt." "Has she kept water down?" "No." "Any rash?" Mrs. Bellamy shook her head. Anna turned to the woman holding the basin. "Empty that. Bring clean, cool water, not ice cold. Remove 2 quilts. Open the window an inch. Jonah, I need the yarrow pouch and the small brown bottle wrapped in blue cloth." He moved at once. The room obeyed her. That was the first small miracle of the night. Mrs. Bellamy, who had once questioned Anna's trunk before the whole town, now stood helpless as Anna opened it on her bedroom floor. No one gasped at the bottles. No one whispered about shame. They watched with desperate eyes and waited to be told how to help. Anna mixed a mild fever tea, cooled it, and touched a spoon to Nora's lips. Most of the first spoonful spilled down the child's chin. Anna wiped it gently and tried again. "Slow," she murmured, "little by little." Jonah saw her hand tremble only once. He stepped closer and held the lamp higher. The light steadied over the child's face. Anna glanced up at him, grateful without words. Hour by hour they worked. Anna bathed Nora's wrists, neck, and ankles with cool cloths. She gave tiny drops of tea between waves of fever. She rubbed a little mint beneath the child's nose when nausea came. She checked for rash again and again. When Nora shook with chills, Anna removed the damp cloth and covered her lightly, then cooled her once the heat rose. Mrs. Bellamy stood in the corner, tears running down her face. At midnight, Nora's breathing grew shallow. The crying woman at the table began to sob louder. Mrs. Bellamy gripped the bedpost. "No, please, no." Anna leaned close to the child, listening. Her own heart struck hard in her chest. Jonah saw the fear cross her face. "What is it?" he asked. "She is weakening." Mrs. Bellamy made a broken sound. Anna opened her grandmother's book with quick hands, then closed it almost at once. She knew what it said. She knew what could be tried. The problem was whether the child had strength enough for the trying. She took out the last of one dried root, crushed it carefully, and mixed it with honey and warm water. Mrs. Bellamy stepped forward. "What is that?" Anna looked at her. "Something to help her keep fluid and bring the fever down. It may not be enough." Mrs. Bellamy pressed both hands to her mouth. Anna held the spoon near Nora's lips. Then she stopped. The room waited. Anna turned toward Mrs. Bellamy. "I need you beside her." Mrs. Bellamy froze. "Me?" "She knows your voice. If she is going to fight, call her back." Mrs. Bellamy looked ashamed. "I do not know what to say." Anna's face softened, but her voice remained firm. "Say you love her. That is enough if it is true." The words struck Mrs. Bellamy hard. Slowly, the proud woman lowered herself beside the bed. She took Nora's limp little hand in both of hers. "Nora," she whispered, "it is Aunt Lydia. I am here, sweetheart. You come back now. You hear me? You come back." Anna gave the medicine, one drop at a time. Some went in, some did not. Jonah held the lamp. The other women prayed under their breath. Wind moved softly at the cracked window. Then Nora coughed. Anna turned her gently to the side. The child gagged, then swallowed a small breath. Anna wiped her mouth and touched her forehead. Still hot. But the pulse had changed. Not steady. Not safe. Changed. "We keep going," Anna said. And they did. Near 2 in the morning, Jonah stepped into the hallway to breathe. The walls of the Bellamy house felt too close. The child's fever sounds had taken him back to another room, another bed, another woman twisting in pain while he stood with empty hands. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. A small voice inside him whispered that he should have stayed at the ranch, that he had no courage for this. That love always led back to a bedside where hope thinned with the lamp oil. The bedroom door opened softly. Anna stepped out. Her sleeves were damp. Her face was drawn with exhaustion. "You are shaking," she said. Jonah looked down at his hands. She was right. "I thought I could stand it." "You are standing." "Barely." "That counts." He let out a rough breath. "I keep seeing Mary." Anna nodded. "I know." He looked at her. "I do not want to make your work harder." "You are not." "I am afraid I will ask you to promise me she will live." Anna stepped closer. "I cannot promise that." "I know. But I can promise I will not leave that child while there is breath in her." Jonah looked toward the bedroom. That was all I had wanted someone to say back then. Anna's eyes filled. She reached for his hand, right there in Mrs. Bellamy's hallway, with the house full of fear around them. "I am saying it now." He held onto her hand like a man holding a rail over deep water. A sound came from the bedroom. Mrs. Bellamy called Mrs. Reed. Anna ran back in. Jonah followed. Nora had opened her eyes. They were unfocused and glassy, but open. Mrs. Bellamy bent over her. "Nora." The child's lips moved. Anna leaned close. "Water," Nora whispered. The room seemed to break open with relief. Anna lifted the cup and gave her one small spoonful. Nora swallowed, then another, then another. "Not too much," Anna warned gently, slowly. Mrs. Bellamy wept into the blanket. For the next hour, Nora drifted in and out, asking twice more for water. Her fever did not vanish, but it began to lower by small degrees. The terrible red in her cheeks softened. Her breathing deepened. Just before dawn, Anna sat back in the chair beside the bed and closed her eyes for 1 second too long. Jonah placed a hand under her elbow before she could slide sideways. "You need rest." Anna opened her eyes. "Check her forehead." Jonah did. "Cooler." He looked at Anna. "Cooler." She gave one weak nod, then turned to Mrs. Bellamy. "If the fever rises again, wake me. Keep giving water by the spoon. No heavy quilts. Change the cloth when it warms." Mrs. Bellamy stared at her. "She will live." Anna hesitated. "She has turned toward living." That was as honest as she could be. Mrs. Bellamy covered her face. A little after sunrise, the doctor finally rode into town, mud on his boots and exhaustion in his eyes. He examined Nora, listened to Anna's account, and looked at the medicines she had used. Then he turned to Mrs. Bellamy, who kept her drinking through the worst of it. Mrs. Bellamy looked at Anna. "She did." The doctor nodded. "Then she likely saved the child from slipping away before I got here." The room went silent. Mrs. Bellamy's pride finally broke. Not loudly, not in a grand speech. It broke in the way her shoulders lowered and her face crumpled. She came to Anna slowly. "I wronged you," she said. Anna stood, steadying herself on the bedpost. Mrs. Bellamy's voice shook. "I called you shameful because I did not like that Mr. Reed showed you kindness when I had not. I called your trunk dangerous because I was afraid of what I could not control. I called you unwanted because I wanted you to feel as small as my words should have made me feel." Tears ran down her cheeks. "I am sorry." Anna looked at her for a long moment. The room waited for forgiveness as if it were owed. But Anna had learned something on the frontier. Mercy was holy. But it was not cheap. "I hope Nora grows strong," Anna said softly. "And I hope the next woman who comes to this town with nothing is met with bread before judgment." Mrs. Bellamy bowed her head. "Yes." Anna picked up her medical book and closed the trunk. Jonah lifted it without being asked. As they stepped out of the Bellamy house, the morning sun touched the street. People had gathered again, but this time no one laughed. Men took off their hats. Women stepped back to make room. Mrs. Vale stood near the gate with her cane and a tired smile. "The child?" she asked. "Better," Anna said. A quiet murmur of relief passed through the crowd. The doctor came out behind them and spoke loudly enough for all to hear. "Mrs. Reed did good work, better than some trained men I have met." Anna lowered her eyes, embarrassed by the praise. Jonah did not. He looked at the gathered townspeople, his hand resting near the trunk. "This is the same trunk you feared yesterday," he said. No one answered. Mrs. Vale tapped her cane once against the ground. "Then perhaps yesterday taught us something." The ride home was quiet. Anna leaned against Jonah's shoulder halfway down the road, too tired to sit straight. He wrapped one arm around her while keeping the reins in his other hand. She did not pull away. When the Reed Ranch came into sight, sunlight lay gold across the porch, the barn, and the cottonwood. Mercy stood near the corral gate. Not lying down. Standing. Anna lifted her head. "She is outside." Jonah stopped the wagon. Mercy took one careful step. Then another. Her injured leg held. Anna covered her mouth with both hands. Jonah jumped down, then helped Anna from the wagon. Together they stood at the fence as Mercy crossed the yard in slow, brave steps. The mare reached them and lowered her head against Anna's chest. Anna wrapped both arms around her neck and began to cry. Jonah placed one hand on Mercy and one on Anna's back. For a moment, everything that had been broken stood together in the morning light. The horse, the woman, the man, the house, all of them scarred, all of them still here. Subscribe for more emotional Wild West stories where kindness, courage, and second chances can change a whole town. That spring, the Reed Ranch began to bloom. But before peace could settle fully over Dry Creek, one final truth waited at the bottom of Anna's grandmother's wooden box. And when Jonah found it, he understood that Anna had not come west by chance at all. Spring came to the Reed Ranch slowly. At first, it arrived only in small signs: a softer wind over the hills, a little green along the creek bed, mud clinging to Jonah's boots instead of frost, birds returning to the cottonwood behind the cabin, filling its bare branches with thin morning songs. Then, almost overnight, the prairie seemed to remember it was alive. Grass pushed through the hard ground. The garden beds darkened beneath Anna's hoe. Mercy stood in the corral with her head high and her heeled legs steady under her. She still favored it on cold mornings, but she walked without fear now, and each step looked to Jonah like an answer to a prayer he had never spoken properly. The cabin changed too. Curtains hung over the clean windows. 2 cups sat beside the stove. Anna's bluebells had been planted along the fence near the porch, just as her grandmother's letter had told her. Their first green shoots were so small that Jonah nearly stepped on them, and Anna scolded him for it with the serious face of a woman guarding treasure. "You can rebuild a fence," she told him. "You cannot rush a flower." Jonah looked at the tiny shoots. "They look like weeds." Anna gave him a sharp look. He lifted both hands. "Fine, important weeds." She tried not to smile, but he saw it. Those were the moments Jonah treasured most. Not the grand ones people might tell in town, not the day of the hearing, not even the wedding. It was Anna kneeling in the dirt with sunlight in her hair. It was the sound of her humming while she folded linens. It was the way she had begun, leaving her medical book open on the table without fear, as if the cabin had become a place where every part of her could breathe. Mercy Crossing changed too, though not all at once. People did not become kind in a single morning simply because shame had taught them a lesson. Some still whispered. Some still watched Anna too closely when she came into town. Mrs. Bellamy did not become warm, but she became quieter. Whenever a stranger arrived at the depot now, Mrs. Vale made sure someone brought water, bread, and a clear answer instead of gossip. A few people came to the Reed ranch for help. A boy with a cut hand. A farmer with a sick calf. A mother whose baby would not sleep. Anna helped where she could and sent for the doctor when she could not. She never claimed more knowledge than she had, and that honesty made people trust her more than any boast could have. Jonah watched it all with a pride he kept mostly to himself. But Anna knew. She always knew. One warm afternoon, while Anna planted onion sets in the garden, Jonah went into the cabin to repair the small brass latch on her grandmother's wooden box. The latch had come loose from years of opening and closing, and Anna had set it near the stove with a note that read, "If your good hands have time." He smiled each time he saw those words. He carried the box to the table and laid out his tools. The wood was worn smooth from travel, touched by 3 generations of women, marked faintly with scratches and old oil stains. He worked carefully, tightening the tiny screws, straightening the bent hinge, and rubbing a little beeswax along the seam. When he turned the box over, something shifted inside the bottom. Jonah frowned. The box looked empty. Anna had removed the last of the bottles long ago. Her grandmother's letter and marriage paper were kept in the cedar chest now. He tapped the bottom. A hollow sound answered. Jonah sat back. For a moment he considered leaving it alone. The box was Anna's. Her secrets had always been hers to open, but this did not feel like prying. It felt like the box itself was asking to be understood. He carried it to the doorway. On it. She looked up from the garden, one hand shading her eyes. What is it? There may be a hidden piece in your grandmother's box. Anna stood at once. Together they sat at the table. Jonah handed the box to her, letting her be the one to decide. She ran her fingers along the bottom until she found a narrow groove hidden beneath the edge. Pressing gently, she slid a thin panel free. A folded paper lay inside. Anna's breath caught. It was old, yellowed, and sealed with a small drop of dark wax. Across the front were 3 words in her grandmother's hand. For Anna's home. Anna looked at Jonah. He nodded once, giving her all the space she needed. She broke the seal. Inside was not a letter like the one read in the church. It was a deed. Anna read the first line, then stopped. What is it? Jonah asked softly. She swallowed hard. It is land. Jonah leaned closer. The paper named 20 acres along Dry Creek, just east of the Reed boundary. It had been purchased years earlier by Anna's grandmother under her maiden name, Margaret Hale Whitmore. Jonah stared at the description, then looked toward the window, toward the land beyond the garden fence. This is the strip by the creek, he said, the one with the old spring. Anna's eyes moved quickly over the page. My grandmother bought it. Jonah took the paper carefully when she handed it to him. It looks that way. Anna shook her head slowly. But why would she own land in Wyoming? At the bottom of the deed was a second folded note, smaller than the first. Anna opened it with trembling hands. My dear girl, if this paper finds you, then you have opened the hidden place in the box. I bought these acres from an old patient's son who was leaving Wyoming and needed money more than land. I never saw the place with my own eyes, but I was told there is water, good soil near the creek, and room enough for a woman to plant medicine roots where no one can tell her she has no right. I did not tell your aunt. She would have taken it or sold it. I did not tell Mr. Hollies because land should not be the price of a husband's kindness. This is not much, Anna, but it is yours, not because a man gave it to you, not because a town allowed it. Yours because every woman should have one patch of earth where her name means something. If the man beside you is worthy, build something there that helps others. If he is not, use it to stand alone. Plant bluebells by the spring. Anna pressed the paper to her lips. For a long while she could not speak. Jonah looked through the window toward the creek land. He had ridden past it for years without knowing it was tied to the woman who would one day change his life. He thought of Anna crossing the country believing she had nothing but a locked trunk and a dead promise. All that time, a piece of Wyoming had already been waiting with her name on it. "You did not come west by chance," he said. Anna wiped her cheek. "No, she sent me with roots." Jonah smiled softly. "And land to plant them in." That evening, they walked to the spring together. The land lay just beyond the fence, where Dry Creek bent between low cottonwoods and wild grass. The spring bubbled from a shallow stone hollow, clear and cold, catching the sunset in small flashes of gold. Anna knelt beside it and placed her palm in the water. "This was hers," she whispered. Jonah stood behind her. "Now it is yours." Anna looked up at him. "Ours, if you will help me build what she hoped for." He did not answer with words. He took off his coat, hung it over a branch, and began clearing fallen limbs from the spring bank. Anna laughed through her tears. "You might at least ask what I want to build." Jonah lifted a branch and carried it aside. "A woman with land, medicine books, and that look in her eyes is not planning a chicken coop." She smiled. "A small healing room," she said. "Nothing grand. A place with shelves for herbs, a clean table, a cot, and a door that opens to anyone who needs help before gossip decides whether they deserve it." Jonah looked at the spring, then at her. "Then we will build it." They began the next morning. Word spread through Mercy Crossing, and this time people came not to accuse but to help. Mrs. Vale arrived in a wagon with old shelves from the post office. Deputy Harlan brought 2 windows from an abandoned shed. The farmer whose mule Anna had treated brought lumber. The mother of the burned boy sent quilts. Even Mrs. Bellamy sent a crate of clean jars and a note written in careful words. "For the room by the spring, may it serve better than my tongue once did." Anna read the note twice, then set it aside. Jonah watched her. "Will you answer?" "Not today." "That seems fair." Anna placed the jars on the shelf. "But I will use them." The healing room rose slowly, board by board. Jonah built the frame. Anna sanded the table smooth. They planted bluebells along the path and rows of mint, yarrow, comfrey, and chamomile behind the little building. Near the door, Jonah carved a small wooden sign. "Dry Creek Room." Under it, Anna added in careful paint, "Help given here." When she saw the words finished, she stood very still. Jonah came beside her. "Is it right?" Anna nodded, tears in her eyes. "It is more than right." By summer, the place had become known across the county, not as a doctor's office. Anna never called herself that. It was simply the room by the spring where Mrs. Reed kept clean cloth, steady hands, and enough courage to meet suffering without turning away. The final healing came quietly. One evening, after the day's heat had faded, Jonah walked with Anna to the cottonwood behind the cabin. The grass around the graves had grown thick and soft. Anna carried bluebells wrapped in damp cloth. Jonah carried Sarah's little cup and the small silver spoon Anna had brought from her trunk. He had asked for this, not because he wanted to bury the past deeper, but because he finally understood it did not need to be locked away to be honored. They knelt together. Jonah placed the little cup at the base of Sarah's marker. Anna laid the spoon beside it. Then she planted bluebells between the 2 graves, pressing the earth gently around the roots. Jonah's hand shook as he touched Mary's marker. "I thought loving again would take me farther from you," he whispered, "but it brought me back able to stand here without wishing the ground would open." Anna bowed her head beside him. The cottonwood leaves moved above them in the evening wind. Jonah looked at his wife. "I still miss them." "You always will. That does not frighten you." Anna took his hand. "No, a heart that remembers faithfully can love faithfully too." He closed his eyes. For 6 years, he had believed grief was proof that his life had ended. Now he understood it was proof that love had once lived there. And love, if given air and mercy, could grow again without betraying what came before. Months passed. The Reed Ranch became a place of 2 rocking chairs, open windows, and garden rows bright with flowers and food. Mercy grew strong enough to carry Jonah on short rides again, though Anna warned him not to let pride outrun sense. Every time he promised, Mercy flicked her ears as if she agreed with Anna. Mercy Crossing never forgot the day Anna stood in the meeting hall with her trunk open. It never forgot the fever night at Mrs. Bellamy's house. And it never forgot that the woman once called unwanted became the one many people rode to when hope was running thin. Years later, travelers passing Dry Creek often saw Jonah and Anna sitting on the porch at sunset. His old chair creaked low. Her bluebell chair rocked beside it. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they only held hands between the chairs while the wind moved through the cottonwood and Mercy grazed near the fence. On spring mornings, Anna opened the healing room by the spring and placed fresh water on the table. Jonah chopped wood for the stove, filled shelves, and repaired whatever needed mending. Above the door, the little sign weathered in the sun. "Help given here." That was the truth of their life. Jonah had ridden into Mercy Crossing for grain, believing he only needed enough feed to survive another winter. He left with a woman carrying a locked trunk, a wounded heart, and a future neither of them could see. Anna had crossed the country hoping a stranger might give her a safe place to stand. Instead, she found a man who let her stand freely, then chose to stand beside her. In the end, neither had rescued the other in the simple way townspeople like to tell it. They had done something harder. They had stayed. They had listened. They had opened the locked places. And together, on a patch of Wyoming earth where bluebells returned after every winter, Jonah and Anna Reed built a home where nothing useful, wounded, or unwanted was ever turned away. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more emotional Wild West stories, where kindness, courage, and love bring broken lives back into the light.